Hey, everybody, how's it going? This is the latest episode of 1999, the greatest film year ever. I've changed the title from best. Well, I really did. It's not the greatest film year. It's the best film year ever. Instead of the best movie year ever, it's the best film year ever, based on this book right here by Brian Rafferty, who supposes that 1999 is the greatest year in film. And the latest episode is going to be about a horror movie. I got two friends on who I know are big horror fans. Plus, I got my co-host Vinny back again. Vinny, thanks for coming back on with us to talk about the Blair Witch Project, which is a movie that you were quite young at when it came out in 1999. You've seen it since then. What are some of your thoughts on the Blair Witch Project?
I don't think you want me to go first, so you should throw to somebody else before. You don't want me to do that.
Okay, all right.
Throw to somebody else. I want to hear everybody else's comments before I talk about this hot garbage. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Well, okay. So we got Kerri Webb and Chad Webb, husband and wife. They're big horror fans, and they're filling in for me last minute on this episode. We had a guest drop out, and they were gracious enough to fill in for me. And I know they're big horror fans. So give me your Kerri. What are your first thoughts on the Blair Witch Project before we get into some of the ideas and the thoughts of the movie? I had lined up. Well, now I have to do something different here, but go ahead.
Yeah, and thanks for having me and Chad on. I really appreciate it. This movie, I really like it. It hit me at just the right age and time for it to actually be scary, and it's one of those that I watched young enough that it still freaks me out a little bit to this day. I grew up in Maryland where this movie takes place, watched it probably a couple years after it came out, and thought for sure I was like young enough to think I knew better that it wasn't the movie was not actually real, like that I knew the actors in the movie didn't actually go missing or whatever, but I thought all the backstory was real with like the Blair Witch and all of that. I think it's a really interesting movie, very creative the way they approached it. And I totally get the criticisms of it, because I think if you sit down and watch this, it might not hit, and it might seem really dumb. But for me, I still love it. I love to watch it just with like lights off, no distractions, and get really into it.
All right, Chad, I'm going to talk about some of the details here pretty soon, but I want to just get your first thoughts on the movie.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to Kerri. I think it is, one of those movies that, on paper, you would look at it and you would go into it and you'd go, what am I watching? I don't even know what the hell's going on in this. This is kind of weird. But like, I feel like if you put it in the context of like when it first came out, of, kind of being like, today's, Curry Barker's Obsession, where it's like a small indie film that just blows up and makes so much money. I feel like, you can't ignore the Blair Witch Project on that level, because it was one of those movies that had brilliant marketing and just, really made people think that this was a real thing. And I think that's kind of the brilliance of it, where Kerri said that, she really believed in the lore of the Blair Witch and, all the stories that are told before they actually go into the woods. I feel like, how they build that up to where everything that's kind of in the stories starts to unfold. And then I think the brilliance of the movie is basically how they don't show anything explicit. It's like, when you're watching a great horror movie and you're like, there's a lot of buildup, and then they finally show the thing, and then you're like, oh, okay, they finally show it. Now I'm not scared anymore. This thing, they never really show anything, and they just show little hints of stuff. And I feel like that's the brilliance of it. It builds just a really good atmosphere. And I feel like it makes just like the best, use of the found footage formula. And, it feels in a way that a movie that like anybody could make, but, which is kind of cool, because it kind of says, hey, go out and make a movie. But then it also feels like a movie that hit at a very specific time in a very specific way, hit that zeitgeist to really just, give us a movie that some may find to be an incredible like masterpiece level of, found footage horror making. And then some people like Vinny might disagree vehemently. So,
all right, Vinny, do you want me to give some of the details about this movie?
No. You did good. You did good. Okay. My 12-year-old nephew in 2006 went on a camping trip. He did the same exact thing. He got lost. They filmed it and they put it together, and it was still a piece of hot garbage. This film is nothing but hot garbage. I'm gonna tell you this right now. Don't ever put the word great and nostalgia and masterpiece ever in the same sentence ever again. This does not even hold a candle to any horror movie on the planet. In the top 10, top 20, top 30, top 40, not even the top 50. This is garbage. I watched this movie for an hour and 52 minutes, and when it's over, I said, I can never get those minutes back in my life. Okay? All I heard was some guy named Josh and some girl screaming for him the whole time. And then half the time, the freaking camera was in the ground looking at the leaves. How was that filmmaking? That's not filmmaking. I saw a great movie today. It was called Evil Dead Burn. That's what this movie did to that movie. It burned it. It burned it to the ground because that's a horror movie. This is not. This is garbage. This is
all right. Well, that's fine. That's fine. You're entitled to that opinion, Vinny. So I just wanted to give it a little bit of a backstory on this movie in case anybody out there watching doesn't know. Vinny and I both we both live in Central Florida. There's a university here called the University of Central Florida. Both the two directors of the movie went to the University of Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez both went to the University of Central Florida, and that they were into filmmaking and that they wanted to make kind of a low budget horror movie. And they ended up starting this whole ground swell kind of a thing where they used their own money. They begged, borrowed, steal their own money to come up with various things. And they put an ad out in the New York Times looking for actors who would be willing to basically go through hell to do this movie. And the gist of, I had it in my notes and then I accidentally deleted my notes. But it was basically, you're gonna be for 10 days. You're gonna be thrown in the woods. You're gonna not know where you're going. You're gonna face cold and wet and damp and wind, and you don't know what's going on. And you have to do it. And if you have any issues, like if you're squeamish about being alone at night or any kind of scary situation, do not apply for this job. And so the main actors, basically were auditioned in by asking them questions and stuff like that. They kind of asked them like all these series of questions that had nothing to do with the movie, just situations. And then when they got the script, it wasn't any like dialogue or any of that kind of stuff. It was just situations that they would encounter when they were thrown in the woods for 10 days. And so these are nobody actors at the time. None of these people were anybody that we know, you know what I mean? They're just people that were auditioning for the movie, and that when they auditioned for the movie, that this specific group of people that are in the movie, mainly Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard, they're actually called the name of the characters in the movie. Heather, Mike, and Josh are the names of the characters in the movie. And so it's easy for them to be able to interact with each other in these situations because they were called themselves. and they were given some technology, a DAT, and then a really good camcorder, which they were going to return to Circuit City, I might add, after the movie was finished. They were going to give it back to get their money back. And they ended up getting in touch with some people at this fledgling movie studio called Artisan Entertainment. This guy was doing kind of low budget movies. He was picking up movies here or there. And Haxon Films is the group of the filmmakers that made the movie, Eduardo and Myrick. And so this is a movie that really is the epitome of what they called in the 90s Indiewood. Indiewood is where Hollywood went into this whole independent thing. And I know this is going to be a cringe name for you guys to hear right now, but I'm going to name Miramax Films was one of these film companies that really got in, and Harvey Weinstein and his brother got a lot of these small independent movies, and they were sending their movies to places like Sundance, the Sundance Film Festival. And that was rest in peace, Robert Redford, the man who formed the Sundance Film Festival. And there was movies like Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and all these kinds of movies, Clerks. And so these guys were hoping if they could make a original horror movie that maybe they could get into the Sundance Film Festival. And so they thrust these three complete strangers. They had no idea who either one of them were. And then when they were working with them, they were, okay, this is the best grouping of three people that they had. And one of them was actually a cameraman. So it was having a real cameraman, a fledgling cameraman in there with them so he could do some of this stuff. And then they would give the camera to different people, filming the other people while they're in the woods, arguing, bickering, complaining, and, oh, you lost the map or whatever. But let's talk about some of that. Let's talk about some of the story. I like the beginning because you get to know the characters. You get to go to the house. You get to meet the people. They're picking each other up. They're going to the grocery store. They're picking their stuff up. They're packing their bags. And these bags aren't easy. They're not like 10-pound bags you're toting around the middle of the woods. They look like they're heavy bags with sleeping bags in them and tents and stuff like that. Chad, I want your opinion on the beginning of the movie and how we get introduced to the characters. And the main thing I want to make sure before you say anything is it's these people, and I'm not really getting the line. I had it in my notes and I lost it. But these people went in the woods to try to investigate this witch, the Blair Witch, and then they found their footage a year later. So that's the gist of the story. So then kind of talk about some of the beginning of the movie and some of the characters and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially three characters, and they're all just like going on this excursion together. But I love how they like go like kind of throughout the town a little bit to like talk to the townspeople and try and like hear the stories. And like these are just like look like regular people. I can't remember if they were just regular people that they had to tell fake stories about. It was just real people.
I think so.
Yeah, a lot of these people were real people that they got to sign off and say, hey, tell us stories about this fake story about
And I feel like a lot of that, because it's so what is the word, like so low to the ground, like it's not very like high produced, that it feels like these people are just going into the woods and making this and talking to the townspeople. It feels very realistic in that way. And so yeah, I think it's just a great setup before they enter the woods. I think without that, you don't really have as much of a movie as you do.
Kerri, what are your thoughts on some of that type of stuff? The townspeople, the introduction of the characters, where you get to learn a little bit about who these people are at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a clever setup. It does set the scene and set the mood for the rest of the movie. Like Chad said, I don't think if you don't have these stories in the beginning and you don't have at least some suspension of disbelief that they're actually like, going around and interviewing people, the rest of the movie does not work at all, because then the weird stuff starts happening and you have no context for it. But once you have the context from the stories, when the weird stuff starts happening later on in the movie to the three filmmakers, I think you get more freaked out by things that otherwise would maybe be not so weird or even kind of somewhat normal. And I don't know, I think it's cool the folks that they got to do the interviews. Like, some of those are really funny, like the one old lady. Her story is kind of creepy, but it also kind of is a little bit funny in how the actor, like the filmmakers in the movie, kind of are, making fun of her afterwards and everything. So it also gives us some like levity at the beginning of the movie. I think this does a decent job of character setup too. Like, we kind of understand that these three people do not really know each other very well at all. It makes it more believable, their interactions later on in the movie.
And the stories themselves are like really creepy.
They're creepy,
like,
yeah.
Kids being murdered, and then the witch is like, she never touches the ground, so she like levitates around, and just like knowing that going in really sets the atmosphere of like, this probably isn't real, but what if it is?
I think it is some of the scariest stuff in the movie. But
yeah, Vinny, do you have any thoughts on the setup, the characters, the kind of the documentary style filmmaking, especially at the beginning?
I think this is the only thing that saved the movie. Honestly, I do. I think it, just like Kerri said, if they didn't have this, it honestly wouldn't make sense. It really wouldn't. So if you went into the theater watching this movie and you missed all that, you would probably have the outcome I just said, where it was stupid, you didn't make sense. I did get a kick out of the one lady that was trying to talk and the kid was putting her finger, or because he knew that she was talking about a scary story and the kid didn't want to hear about it. But when I was watching this, I was wondering the same thing as how are these? Okay, so when you watch a movie and you like, older people don't want to be involved in something like this. Like they want to go on with their day. They want nothing to do with something like this. So for them to, especially the first guy seemed like he wanted to talk forever. But then there was the other guy that called the girl sir. He didn't seem like he wanted anything to do with this story. So my question would be, I would love to know how it took to get to con these people to do and talk about these stories is what I would love to know.
Yeah, that does sound interesting. Yeah, he's probably just say, "Hey, we're making a movie. Could you just say whatever just to give us something so we can put towards the movie to make the movie longer and this is what the concept is. Can you just say something?" And the guy was like, "Hey, I'm just over here fishing. I don't really want to talk, But he ended up saying some good stuff anyway. But something I wanted to talk about, I kind of lost track of where I was in the conversation, but I wanted to talk about after they brought this movie to Sundance, they were able to get a little bit of distribution and they were able to get this movie to go to Sundance. They ended up in the midnight section of Sundance, and there was a little bit of a crowd out there at Sundance, Utah, and it's cold and stuff like that. And they got a very crazy reaction to this movie, and that what they ended up doing is using that reaction from Sundance in trailers. They would put the trailers out and they would show the camera on the people being scared of what was going on while they were watching the movie. And the other thing that they did was they set up a fake website and the Blair Witch .com and they would put like things about the film and clips and various types of things on the website, and that people would have go to the website, and they were developing a realistic thing behind this movie that later on we would find out was fake. The whole thing was fake. But I love this idea that they would set up a website. The website was fake. The whole idea of the thing was fake, but people were building the tension and the fan fervor behind this movie. What is the Blair Witch Project? We need to see this movie. And so it became this kind of like larger than life thing that was like thousands. I think it was like $30,000 they ended up making the movie for, or something like that. And they ended up getting some distribution money later on. But the movie ended up making $600,000. Wow. $600,000 on like a $33 million budget. And then because of all that stuff, it really built this thing that had never been done before. This had never been done before. Talk a little bit about that stuff real quick before we get more into the story, Chad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's kind of like the whole thing. I mean, when you have today, where you have the internet as it is, with something like, I said Curry Barker's Obsession, but then you also have like something like, Barbenheimer that came out. That's just like, not everyone goes to the movies, as much as like we might, but then, you have something that's like a word of mouth kind of sensation. That's like, you have to go see both Barbie and Oppenheimer, and, it's a whole thing. Or now you have to go see Obsession, and this thing's blowing up. And, it's maybe not all the time the movies that you might expect, but, sometimes you'll just have a movie that just hits at the right time, that just has something about it that gets people interested. Like you said, with the, is this real? Like, did these people actually wander into the woods in Maryland and, I don't know, go missing or die or whatever, and people found the tapes? Like, that's what the genre is called, is found footage. Like, did they find this footage? And, that's scary as hell, just thinking about, these people that just went missing in the woods. Every time I hear a true crime podcast that's about someone went missing, and you just hear the story of what they did, everything that they did is just creepy now. Because I'm just like, or something that happened to them is creepy now. Like, he drove his car into the ravine and was never seen again. I'm just like, that just gives me chills every time I hear that. So yeah, I mean, if you hear that and then you see, a bunch of people freaking out at the movie in the trailer, it might blow up. And, I think that's, kind of the story of this movie. And, whether the content of the movie actually justifies that, I guess is up for debate, but, it was a phenomenon at the time.
Yeah. And real quick, I missed, budget was 60,000 after they got the distribution deal with Artists and Entertainment. And the movie ended up making $1.53 million. $1.53 million. So
Incorrect. That's not right.
I just looked it up.
I'm looking at it now. 250 million worldwide.
Okay. Okay. So that's good then. Well, that's good. I'm glad you have the right, because I was just looking it up. I said to myself, I think I got something wrong here. So I just wanted to make sure I fixed that. Kerri, what are your thoughts on the whole idea of the found footage, the website, the whole Sundance, how it blew up at Sundance, and recording the audience reactions and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really it paid off, right? Like, it was a good marketing strategy because it paid off. And I think this was at a time, this was probably one of the last few years that you could try a marketing strategy like this, because the internet just became so much more widespread, and we now can gather information about people so much more easily, even just like a few years later. I don't know how many people actually believe that these three these three people in the movie had actually like disappeared or whatever. But I think just all of that did contribute to how popular this movie got, and just really driving it through like word of mouth and like spreading this lore even further. And they made like a whole, I don't know if it was a sequel or like some kind of special feature. Yeah, like where they kept pretending that the people were missing, and the whole thing is just interviews with like their friends and family and stuff. And I've never watched the whole thing. It's very boring, and I only know about it because it was on the, like, my uncle taped this movie and gave it to my dad. And it was like on the beginning of the tape, so I had to always fast forward through that part to get to the actual Blair Witch Project movie. But I think this also, like, I'm sure other films did some similar strategies before this, but this really became one of the, like, the filming people and their reactions and like spreading lore about a movie. I mean, it became a really popular way for found footage movies to kind of be marketed. Like Paranormal Activity had very similar marketing, similar concept with really unknown actors and everything.
No, I absolutely agree. But that's what I wanted to kind of get into. Vinny and I were talking a little bit before off air before you guys came. And look, we're dealing with a movie that came out 26 years ago. This kind of movie didn't exist before. Maybe the Legend of the Boggy Creek was out in 72. You might say, okay, well, that actually gave Myrick and Sanchez the idea to do this. The Legend of Boggy Creek did. And Boggy Creek is in Florida. We have Boggy Creek here in Florida, in Orlando. And but the fact of the matter is, this is a 26-year-old movie. It had nothing like this had ever been done, and I feel like that's where the phenomenal nature of this whole thing, the amount of money it made, the amount of money it cost, the fact that you get unknown actors, you got this documentary style filmmaking, and all that kind of stuff. And it became this phenomenon, this is unbelievable thing. I feel like you have to kind of give a movie like this. And that's one of the great things about 1999. It had so many different kinds of films and so many different kinds of filmmakers and actors and stories and this stuff. Then, can't you give this a little bit of credit for the fact that it came out 26 years ago and that nothing like this had ever been done before, and it created this kind of fervor that we had never seen behind a movie?
I'll give it some credit that it's different than at that time. We've never seen it, but then again, you have to look at the product for what it is. Like I said in the beginning, it's not anything that nobody can do on their own with their own cell phone or camera.
Today, now.
Yeah, but even back then,
now. No, you couldn't do that back then.
Oh yeah, you're right. You couldn't buy a camera from Kmart and did the same thing. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
They did buy a camera, and they had a DAT camera, and they had a Circuit City camcorder, which were new at the time, very, very new at the time, very expensive, I might add, for 1999 a camcorder. So listen, nobody was doing this.
I didn't say nobody was doing it. I'm saying that if you had the money to do it, you could. Of course, everything that comes out is more money. Okay, the DVD player back then, okay, DVD player was what, almost $1,000. DVDs were freaking $20-$30. Okay, after a while they drop. Okay, listen, this filmmaking is not for poor people. Okay, it's for people that have money. All right. Yes, can you do filmmaking today on a budget than you could back then? Absolutely, because half the time a lot of these filmmakers are using their cell phones and this is how they're creating this stuff. So yes, back then it was different. But what I'm saying to you is that I'm going to tell you this right now. There probably was more than just these two goofballs sitting around a table. Okay. You know, I guarantee you Chad and Kerri, when they were younger, they probably thought the same thing. We can make a movie. We can take our parents' camcorder and make a movie. I'm sure, because I did the same thing. But what I did not like about this was it spawned a bunch of other movies, like you said, Paranormal Activity. I mean, what's that stupid one with Marlon Wayans that came out with 3 of them? What's that movie called?
Oh, I don't remember.
Where something house where it's a comedy, but it's, you guys know what I'm talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
it's there's funny aspects of it, but it's stupid. But I mean, look, it was at its time, 99. Okay, it had its run. Okay, no, what's the last time we've seen this in this generation?
That worked.
That actually worked. And I'm not talking about films that nobody watched. Like, the horror genre is like the only genre I can tell you that has its own network. Was it Shudder? And there's so many movies on there that nobody gives a crap about. Now, there are movies that are good on there. There is a lot that are good, that are decent. But there is a lot of these found footage films on that site. And yeah, you'll find some on there. But what I'm saying, but yes, for the time that it was totally different. It was a different concept. Now, if I was Skip's age in 99, and I saw this, I would have a way different outcome than Skip did. Because Skip was probably like, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Just give me some jelly and I'll watch it all day long.
All right. Chad, you got any thoughts about what I just said? And maybe you want to comment on what Vinny said?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's new. It was nuanced then. I mean, for me, like, kind of seeing the transition from not having stuff like this to having stuff like this, I didn't feel it because I was like 9. I wasn't watching movies like the Blair Witch Project when I was 9. But I watched this much later, and it still had an effect on me. I think as far as every kind of movie has some sort of genesis, has some sort of like starting point where, like, just, I'm not saying Halloween invented the slasher, but Halloween was a brilliant slasher. And then so many slashers after it were terrible. So it feels like, you might have like one great one and then spawn a bunch of different ones that are like, ew, what are all these? I don't know. I don't think that necessarily means that the Blair Witch Project is bad just because it has like all that other stuff that came out after it. But, it's not also not a bad point to say that, like, well, we wouldn't have all those if we didn't have this, kind of a deal. But I mean, I think sometimes you got to look at a film on its own merits, like, talking about like, Shudder and stuff, and like a bunch of stuff on there nobody cares about. I'm sure some people do. And I feel at the end of the day, maybe that matters too. I don't know. But I do feel like just talking about Blair Witch Project, I think it is nuanced. I think it did have a really groundbreaking kind of, formula to getting success, being a movie that we're still talking about almost 30 years later. And then also just having things like an atmosphere and tension building and stuff that, I feel like does leave a mark on cinema, especially when we get to the last shot of the film, which I think is like one of the most like iconic shots, not to mention the whole beanie with the, I could do the beanie part right now. The beanie, speaking of Sundance, the beanie with the snot. I won't do the snot, but Yeah.
Kerri, you got any thoughts on that? And then we'll move into talk about the characters a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this was really innovative for its time, and I think I imagine this movie just inspired a ton of, regardless of genre, a ton of indie filmmakers who did, I think, look at this movie and say, look, if these folks could make this type of movie and earn that kind of money from it, why can't I do it? Which is kind of cool and inspiring. And I'm sure we have some films out there who, that Blair Witch is part of, like good films that Blair Witch is probably a credit to. I agree at the same time, we do have a crap ton of crap found footage movies. I blame that slightly more on like Paranormal Activity, which obviously was inspired by this movie, but I don't remember after Blair Witch Project there being a big explosion of found footage movies until Paranormal Activity, which I think was like, I don't know, 2008 or something. And then I think we got to the intersection of it became much more affordable to make these types of movies and easier to like distribute them and get them out there than, back in 1999. And but yeah, I think it's innovative for what it is. It inspired a lot of crap, but I think it also inspired, some pretty good stuff as well.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the characters and some final thoughts. What do you think about these? Are three completely unknown people who responded to an ad in the New York Times, and they ended up being halfway decent, if you ask me. I thought they were pretty believable, especially Heather Donahue. I thought she was that scene when she's looking into the camera and just like freaked out and all that. I think that moment. And then, there's a famous quote. I had it in my notes, but I don't have it right now. That she says a famous line in that monologue that she says into the camera, and I can't remember it off the top of my head because I don't have my notes with me right now. But if either one of you guys, Chad or Vinny or Kerri, if you can remember the quote she says into the camera.
I don't remember offhand. I remember she like apologizes to the families of like her family and the families of Josh and Mike. I'm trying to remember what else. I don't remember off the top of my head what else she said though. I mean, I'll just talk about the acting. I think it's pretty solid, especially for three people who are unknown, probably do not have much acting experience, definitely not movie acting experience. And they hold this movie, I think, as much as possible, given the storyline. I think it's, I don't know what else to say about that. So I'll just stop there. I'm going to start rambling.
I have the quote. The quote here. I'm afraid to close my eyes. I'm afraid to open them. I had that in my notes, and I lost my notes accidentally. That's chilling, isn't it? I'm afraid to close my eyes. I'm afraid to open them. When you're dealing with, you don't know where you are. You're lost in the woods. It's cold. It's dark. Your feet are wet. That's crazy, Chad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, a lot of the naturalistic kind of dialogue and acting, because these are like, not unknown people, like you said, but just maybe people with like little acting experience. I feel like sometimes that helps, where it just like really gives like a grounded feel. Like, when they're arguing, it feels like they're actually like arguing and mad. Like, how the fuck could you lose the map? That's what the hell. And how are we walking in circles? Kind of a deal. Just really losing themselves out in the woods. Really quick story. Kerri and I one time went to an Airbnb out in the woods. It was attached to like some rich person's house. It was like a little shack, tiny house or whatever. And it was in the woods, and we watched the Blair Witch Project. It was one of the scariest, times because of the rustling of the trees and stuff. Kerri, quick.
Well, yeah, because we were in like a valley, I guess. We were in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And I guess where we were, the sound started echoing. So we were watching this movie, and we kept hearing like, the best I can describe it is it sounded like a bear was rolling trash cans right outside of where we were. And I guess it was like the structure of this like little tiny house and like being in the valley. When we opened the door, we realized there was nothing even remotely near us. It was like some kind of like, sounded like gunshots or something, but not close to us or anything. But that definitely made for like a very scary experience where you're watching a movie of people getting lost in the woods.
I think because like we're recreating like a sense of isolationism and just like knowing that for miles and miles around you, there's nothing. Like every way around you, there's nothing, and it's dark. I know like the scene when they're in the tent and they hear stuff outside. Like that's one of the scariest things I can ever think about. Is something outside of my tent. And so I don't ever want to go outside of the tent. and it just being pitch black and just like having all of those stories in your head. I could just imagine that, being someone who's there and then them recreating that kind of vibe in the movie. Yeah, I just think is really scary.
You know why I wouldn't worry about this? Because it would never happen to me.
Oh, okay.
I would never put myself in something stupid like this. Like I would never let a girl go, "Hey, you want to go camping?" No, fuck no. I'll go camping in the backyard, not in the woods. No, that doesn't sound like fun. I'm telling you, they'll do anything for $1. I swear to God.
I've been canoeing, and it just absolute downpours on you when you're canoeing and down in the Silver River in Florida and Ocala, and that was not a fun experience at all. And I've had my sister lives in the woods in a cabin in the woods in Wisconsin, and a bear did knock over her dumpster. She has a dumpster, and a bear did come in the middle of the night and knock over her dumpster, and then the raccoons got into her dumpster after the bear knocked it over. But Vinny, do you got any final thoughts that you want to say about this movie, positive or negative or otherwise?
I can't wait to see it again.
Oh, come on.
I cannot wait to watch this again.
Okay. Is that you want to tell us where you can be found as well? I know you got to get going here.
You can always find me in Skip's Basement. Also on Unpopular Reviews on YouTube. On the entertainment side, Unpopular YouTube, we do each week we pick 3 movies. This coming week we're doing Space Jam, we're doing Basketball, and we're doing it's the Sixth Man. So that's the next 3 we're doing. And then also you can always catch me on Friday Night SmackDown every Friday night on YouTube.
All right, well, Vinny, I know you got to get going, and I appreciate you sticking in there and hanging in with us tonight. I know you weren't a big fan of this movie.
Oh, it's okay. It's all good, man. It's my pleasure. I don't mind watching crap every time.
All right, buddy. You take care.
All right.
I'll catch you later. So, Chad, you got any final thoughts on the movie? Anything that I may have missed, or if I got it wrong or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really good that we kind of covered a lot of the impact that this movie made, because we could talk about just the movie, the content of the movie and what happens. And I feel like when people just strip it down to that, a lot of the times, it's a take it or leave it kind of a thing. You're either scared by it or you're not. Our buddy on our channel, Hunter Chambliss, over at Welcome to Primetime, he doesn't love it, but he loves like Paranormal Activity. So, it's kind of like maybe what you grew up with or what you like kind of let yourself be taken by. Or even like going back to 1978's Halloween, there will be people apparently that go to screenings of that and they laugh at it. And they're just like, this stupid old movie. But it's just like, you put yourself in the vibe of the movie and let the movie take you. I've watched Hereditary. That's one of my favorite movies. One of the scariest horror movies I've ever seen. I've watched Hereditary in like the daylight. Trying to cook and watch Hereditary. It's not that scary.
My press screening was at 10 a.m. in the morning of Hereditary.
No, but I mean, like, I'm not talking about the time of day. I'm talking about the lighting. Like, if you're in the theater and you're watching it like just dark, or in your living room watching it dark, it will grab you and take you. And I feel like that's what this movie does. That's why we brought up the story about our watching it in the woods and stuff. I don't think you have to watch it in the woods for it to be scary. It just adds an extra kind of layer to it. But I feel like I said, the atmosphere, the psychology of it, where you have all of the people arguing and they're losing their minds and scared to death, snot coming down. I feel like all of that works to create this atmosphere and the brilliance of not, because a modern day movie right now would show The Witch. They would. And then it would either just be really scary because The Witch itself is scary, but probably not. It'll probably lose its mystery. And I feel like because you had all that story, because you have all these little things unraveling, like, losing the map, but then, the one of the guys just disappears at one point. And then
Josh.
for a lot of the movie, Josh just disappears. And then they're just saying Josh. And then you hear him screaming back, but you know it's not him. Especially when they find like the teeth and the hair and the little bindle.
Well,
like,
without interrupting you, I apologize.
Sure.
We hear the story of how the witch makes one of the kids stand in the corner and then kills the other kid. So in the back of your head, you know this story, what the witch did. So then you see, okay, the guy standing in the corner at the end of the movie. That means she killed the other guy.
Yeah,
basically,
and killed Heather.
Yeah. So and that's where I mean, I think that the further along it goes, the ratcheting of the tension and the having those final scenes at night, finding the house, and then don't know they can't find each other in the house and all that stuff. That stuff really works. It's very, very effective. Obviously, today it might not be as effective. That's why I wanted to bring up the fact that this is a 26-year-old movie. It came out in 1999. That's why we're doing this series. So you really say a lot of important things there, Chad. It was, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to say that one thing. What else do you have more to say?
I mean, pretty much just that. Like, there's just a lot of little nuances about. I'm trying to remember every little like detail of things that happen. But them getting lost, just not knowing where they are in the middle of the woods, often very dark, and even when it's not, like you said, I'm afraid to open my eyes and close them. When you open your eyes, a lot of the times you do find really creepy shit, or someone disappears. And then when they call your name, and then you're just like, I don't think that's him. That's just scary. Just like the mystery of what you don't know and what you can't see, and knowing all of those stories just adds a level of terror that you can either just scoff at or actually be creeped out by. And like you said, that last shot where it's kind of got like a Sopranos ending. It's you see him in the corner, and then you hear something happen to Heather, and then it cuts, and you're just like, what? So I feel like that's kind of iconic and just a really cool way to end it as well. And it really adds to that whole found footage kind of thing.
Yeah, a year later they find the footage, which is why it spawned that whole genre. Kerri, give me some final thoughts and anything that we may not have touched on that you wanted to bring up, or anything about what we said that you want to comment on.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, I don't know. I still find this, I know a lot of people watch this movie today, don't find it scary at all. I think it's one of those things maybe where those first few horror movies you watch when you're young will always scare you. Like, there's just something in them that, like, those first few horror movies that got to you will always scare you. I think that's how this movie is for me. A little bit, but I think it's also a lot about, like Chad said, atmosphere. This is one I think, and you can argue that maybe it's not the best horror movie because of this, but I think it is one where you have to get yourself into it to watch it. Like, if you watch this, I think with the lights on and like you're not only half paying attention, it's gonna suck. You're gonna think it sucks and it's a really boring movie. If you watch this at night with the lights off, you're totally paying attention to it. Let yourself, kind of like Chad said, be carried away by it and like get into the psychology of it. I think it's, like you said, Dan, extremely effective and really scary. So I would like to hope that, if folks have watched this movie and don't find it scary, maybe try giving it another chance, like in those kind of conditions, and seeing if it works a little bit better for you. Maybe it won't, but overall, I don't know. There's something about this that freaks me the fuck out, and it makes it really fun to watch.
Just quick question. Do you guys think it would have been scarier if they had shown the witch, or you like the way it is?
Nope.
Yeah,
I like it exactly the way it is. I think that the fact that this is the movie that spawned the found footage and that we don't know, I want to go into like, and I like the fact that he thought Evil Dead Burn was a great movie, and I'm coming around to the Evil Dead franchise because for it was this campy kind of thing back in the day, and now it's this really really effective kind of horror franchise, you know. And but I want mystery, I want suspense, I want dark, I want, like you said, not to watch it in the middle of the day, watch it at night, you know, even if you have to turn down the air condition where it's cold, you know. But trust me, I've had my feet wet in situations. I hate having my feet wet. I pressure wash a lot. I used to have a job where I pressure. It's one of the most miserable experiences on the face of the earth, having your feet, your socks, your shoes wet. So her traipsing around the streams and the woods and having her feet wet, that I can imagine how miserable that must be for somebody. I'll tell you that right now, you know. And like I said, I did that canoe trip where I completely downpoured. I was completely drenched in this canoeing through the Silver River in Ocala, Florida. So, but yeah, so I think this movie is effective. I think it gets what it's supposed to do. I think the marketing campaign with the Blair Witch, the fake website, and recording the audience watching the movie at Sundance as your trailers, I think was a ingenious idea to put trailers out with the people being freaked the hell out. I think that people obviously copied that years later, you know, and that's why 99 is such a, and you know, I'm coming around to this year. Obviously, we've only done a handful of episodes of this show, but we're starting to come around to this year being such a great year with movies like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
We got a lot of episodes of 1999, the best film year ever, to go, and some horror movies, more horror movies before we get to the end of this thing. But you guys pinch hit, no pun intended. We're supposed to do this last night, but we're watching baseball last night. So, but we got two pinch hitters, Chad and Kerri. You guys pinched hit and helped me out. I really appreciate you because a buddy of mine was going to do this and something happened and he couldn't do it. So, but I really appreciate you guys. You guys brought a lot to the conversation, which I loved. And I said to myself, Chad is going to he's going to want to talk about this. I have a good feeling about this. And I know you did Big Daddy not that long ago. And I'm glad you brought in Kerri with you. But where can you guys be found in the interwebs, or if you want to be found at all? Not in anybody's basement, I don't think.
Well, I'm currently in my basement, but but yeah, I definitely wanted to do this. But as soon as I said that you wanted to talk about Blair Witch, Kerri lit up, and she was like, "What? You're talking Blair Witch?" So yeah, I think she likes the movie more than I do.
I'm glad she jumped in with us.
It's scary. It really does. Like I say you have to watch this with the lights off, but I've had like Chad has watched this sometimes like in the middle of the day or whatever, trying to study for trivia. And I'm just like hearing the stories and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so freaked out by this. There's something about it. And that's so fun for me though.
I watched it in the middle of the day the other day. So
yeah, but you can find me to check out Cinema Chad as my regular channel. I rank stuff. I try to do like reviews and stuff sometimes. And then check out Welcome to Primetime, which is the show channel that Kerri and I have with our buddy Hunter Chambliss. And we just talk horror. So if you like horror movies like this, we talk a lot about over there. But we haven't recorded in a while, but we're going to try to get back into it soon. And always love chatting with Dan. Speaking of chatting with Dan and Kerri a lot, check out the Dill Pickle Movie Network. My buddy Dylan Randazzo runs that, and he does a lot of stuff over there, but mainly what I do with him is an Oscar show called Picture This. These two have been on it multiple times, and they're both really great guests every time we have them on, and we just go through each, kind of like you're going through the 1999 here. We go through different years every month, just because we want to watch every best picture movie ever. So that's what we're on a mission to do. And yeah, check out that too.
Kerri, you got anything you want to plug or anything you want to tell people? You know, there's a lot of creepy people out there. I don't know if they want to come looking for you. No.
I hope not. You can find me online at the places Chad said.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. You can find me under my name, Dan Skip Allen, on Facebook, X/Twitter. Oh, cool! I love that shirt. Instagram/Threads, Blue Sky, Letterbox. Oh God, I love that shirt.
Harry shirt.
Yeah, that is awesome. Letterboxed. Also, on my website, I'm the owner, editor-in-chief, and head film critic of FromTheFourthRow.com. This episode is going to be dropping on a Saturday, but just so you know, I have released my review of The Odyssey. It's on the website right now, and we'll be having a review of Spider-Man Brand New Day pretty soon, and hopefully Hadestown Pro Shot, and Batman, the Cape Crusader Season 2, and all kinds of good stuff on the website with my team of writers that help me. I couldn't do it without all of them. And this is what I love to do, is talk about movies and write about movies. So like Chad said, I'm over at the Dill Pickle Network sometimes. I'm over with Chasing Labels, my guys, Steven and Andrew. I'm over with the Movie Hero Network sometimes. I'm with Malcolm doing Gone with the Wind. That's our award show podcast, which will be getting started pretty soon, probably sometime in August. So, but thanks again for Kerri and Chad. You guys filled in, pinch hit for me, and I really appreciate it. You guys brought a lot of good information, a lot of good love behind this movie, and I had a feeling you would. So for Chad and Kerri and Vinny, see you later.